Hello, this is your video lecture for the digestive system. Please make sure that you have your PowerPoint presentation available as I will be going through the information that is presented on the study guide. The study guide itself, actually, I believe it has both the digestive system and the urinary system together, but this lecture is only focusing on the digestive system. So, to get started, start with the basic functions of the digestive system itself, and I'm just looking over here to the information that I have posted. And it goes over the various functions, and in one of the PowerPoint presentations, the PowerPoint presentation that is actually the one that came from the textbook, it has all of this information listed as you see it on the study guide. So the function of our digestive system is from the point of ingestion to the point of defecation. Is designed to actually receive any nutrients and minerals from anything it is that we put into our system and hopefully utilize whatever it is that we've eaten for our good. Whatever we cannot use, then it is actually packaged up as undigested material and it's excreted to outside of the body as fecal matter. So that first PowerPoint presentation or that first slide actually identifies the different components. So I will look into those. Ingestion. Well, we know what that is. When you actually put the food into your mouth. And once you put that food into your mouth, that's not enough. You have to actually begin to chew it. So inside of our oral cavity, we have two things to take place. We have mechanical digestion and chemical digestion. Obviously, the mechanical digestion, we can think of our teeth doing all the work, but our teeth are not the only structures inside of our mouths that are doing all the work. Of course, they do help to break it down into smaller pieces and grind it even more finely, but also the roof of our mouth, which is referred to as our palate, is also designed to help to break the food down. Even though it's stationary, it's there so that when our teeth and our tongue, which also helps with digestion, hit it up against it, it helps to break it down further. So both the palate as well as the tongue will help with mechanical digestion. As far as chemical digestion, we know we have saliva in our mouths. Saliva is slightly acidic. And because it is slightly acidic, it will help to break the food down that we ingest a little bit faster. When we talk about the acidity or the alkalinity of foods, there's what's referred to as a pH scale. The pH scale will measure the amount of acidity or the amount of alkalinity, which we sometimes refer to as something as being basic. And it's based on a scale that runs from 0 to 14. Anything below 7, because 7 is considered neutral. Anything below 7 is considered acidic. Anything above 7 is considered alkaline or basic. So either extreme of the pH scale have the ability to be either very strong acids or very strong bases. So when I say that saliva is slightly acidic, it's probably closer to the neutral range, where 7 is neutral. It might be 6 or a little bit greater than 6 point something, because if you think about it, when you have a cut or something, if you have a small paper cut and you immediately put your finger into your mouth, you can feel a slight burn, and that's because of the acidity of the saliva that's in our mouth. All right, so that's mechanical and chemical digestion. After we have finished getting the food down to a workable size, then our tongue will help to propel it to the back of our throat. Once we swallow, and our throat is referred to as our pharynx, and we'll go over those inclusive structures in just a moment. Once it's propelled to the back of our throats and we swallow, it actually goes down a very long tube that leads from the back of our throat all the way down to our stomach. It's called the esophagus. It's sometimes referred to as the food tube. And there's a point at which whatever food we have swallowed, we cannot retrieve. However, if it should get stuck or lodged somehow inside of the esophagus, there's a process that's called peristalsis. And what peristalsis is, it's actually the wave-like contractions of smooth muscles. So literally, if it's in our esophagus and it gets lodged, the esophagus is lined with that smooth muscle that will help to move the food down through the tube, literally kind of through this type of action. The best way to think about it is to think about a snake. When a snake has to engulf or try to eat, let's say, a very small rodent, it doesn't have any hands to put it into its mouth. It will actually drop its jaw and engulf it. But then it doesn't have any way to really get it down. So then the wave-like contraction of that smooth muscle will help the snake to move that particular rodent down through its digestive tract. That's kind of like what our bodies do as well. Okay. So once that's happened and it gets into our stomach, well, then all over again, we have the mechanical and the chemical digestion that occurs. Mechanical digestion occurs by what are referred to as rugae, and they're the little folds that are in our stomach. They're kind of like, if you can equate it to a washing machine, like the agitator in the washing machine kind of shakes the clothes around. Well, that's kind of what the rugae inside of our stomach does. It helps to move the food around and bounce it around and hit it around inside of the stomach. While the chemical, which is called hydrochloric acid, HCl, and it's very acidic, it will work further then to help break the food down. Once it's gotten down to a workable size, it will move it into the next organ. And the next organ is the small intestine. And it's within the small intestine that we have the greatest amount of nutrient absorption. So if we've eaten something healthy like chicken breast and brown rice and some leafy green vegetable, it's going to grab all of those great nutrients from that very nutritious meal that we just ingested. However, if we just finished eating a quarter pounder with a large fry and, a soda, then it's going to take whatever's in there too. So our small intestine is designed to absorb any type of nutrients and minerals from whatever it is that we've eaten. From that point, it will move it into the next organ, which is our large intestine. The large intestine's job is to remove any water from whatever it is that we have just finished eating. That's kind of like the last stop shop. We got the nutrients from the small intestine. Large intestine is like, hey, let me try to see if I can get some water out of what you've passed on to me. And then from that point, if it cannot, once it has extrapolated as much water as it can get from whatever it is that we've eaten, then it's packaged up very nicely into what we would call the portion of defecation, the fecal matter, or the feces. Feces are the undigested material that we couldn't do anything with. So our body is designed to go ahead, package it up very nicely, and expel it to the outside. So ideally, from start to finish, that's what our digestive system does. As you continue to look through the PowerPoint presentation, as well as the study guide, it goes over each organ in detail. I'm expecting you to know the organ itself, as well as the function of that particular organ. In Blackboard, you should also find posted a digestive system chart. The digestive system chart actually lists the various organs that are the major organs of the digestive system, as well as the accessory organs of the digestive system. And then there's another column that gives you a little bit of information about both. So you can access that chart as well as the study guide to find the various components of our digestive system. Now, I touched on a few of them right there, and there are a couple of things that I want to touch on as we go through. As I go through the PowerPoint presentation as well as the study guide, it has everything listed that you need to know in regard to what the function of the mouth is, the fact that it's the oral cavity, where adults are supposed to have 32 teeth, what the tongue does, the pharynx also being called the throat, and that it has 3 regions to it, the oral, the nasal, and the laryngeal, and they're all named according to the structures that they're located closest to. So therefore, the most superior region of the pharynx would be the nasal pharynx because it's closer to the nose. Oral pharynx will be directly behind the mouth, and the laryngeal pharynx is the most inferior region. The esophagus I've already identified as the food tube, and it actually extends from your pharynx all the way down to your stomach. And as I had talked about in the chapter on muscles, there is a sphincter muscle. Remember, we said sphincter muscles are round muscles that can contract to either keep something in or regulate when something passes from one point to another. And you will notice that I'm looking at the study guide right now. The study guide does identify what's referred to as the cardiac or esophageal sphincter. That muscle will contract when the stomach has reached maximum capacity of the amount of food that it can hold. Once the stomach has digested some of that material and passed it on to the next organ, which is the small intestine, then that sphincter will relax to allow for the passage of some more food. In addition to that, then we talk about the stomach. The stomach actually has 4 regions to it, and it's listed there as the fundus or the fundic region, which is that ballooning portion of the stomach. The greater portion of the stomach is called the body, and the last portion of it is called the pyloric region. And the pyloric sphincter regulates when food will pass from the stomach into the small intestine. Now, as I indicated when I was talking earlier about the functions of our digestive system, I talked about the rugae being inside of the stomach, and they look like little folds or little ridges inside of the stomach designed to help with mechanical digestion. The interesting thing about mechanical digestion is that the rugae will continue to perform it even if there's nothing there to be digested. So sometimes we can actually hear the rugae actually performing their function without having any food there. And this is what we refer to as our stomach growling. But it's not necessarily growling, we know that, so to speak, but it's the rugae trying to break down something that's actually not there. If there was food present, then we probably would not hear what we refer to as the growl. Continuing on, after the stomach has passed it through the pyloric region, then we have the small intestine where we have nutrient absorption. There are 3 regions to the small intestine. The first region is called the duodenum. The second region, which is all very squiggly, is called the jejunum. And the third region is the ileum. Now, does it go into jejunum, mesentery, and the ileum, yes. And all of these regions are held together by what's referred to as the mesentery. So if we were actually to open up the abdominal cavity and reach for and grab for the small intestine, it would not come unraveled because the mesentery holds those 3 regions together. So we've got the duodenum, the very coiled jejunum, and then it begins to straighten out just a little bit before it actually fuses with the large intestine, and that's called the ileum. The ileum is then, at the end of the ileum, there's what's referred to as the ileocecal sphincter. Now you might say, well, I thought you just said that it was moving into the large intestine. It actually is, but the first region of the large intestine is referred to as the cecum. So the ileocecal sphincter regulates when food can move from the small intestine into the first region of the large intestine, which is the cecum. The cecum then also has a very small kind of tail looking like organ that's attached to it, and that is the appendix. The appendix is located in the cecal region of the large intestine. From that point, we have the ascending colon, or the ascending portion of the large intestine, because colon is actually used synonymously with the large intestine. So the ascending colon is up the right side. The transverse colon is just as it states, it's horizontal in the top portion of the abdominal region. Then we have the descending colon that actually goes down the left side of the body. And then we have what's referred to as the sigmoid colon. The sigmoid colon, if I can actually demonstrate something very quickly. Now remember, whenever I say right, we're always thinking anatomically right. So the ascending colon would come up in this fashion, transverse, descending, and then we have what's referred to as the sigmoid colon that kind of looks like that. They're pretty good not to be looking at it, okay? So this is ascending, transverse, descending, and right here would be sigmoid colon. Okay, and after it goes through the sigmoid colon, we have what's referred to the rectum. And the rectum is that site where it actually packages up that undigested material to prepare it to be expelled to the outside. And then from that point, the anal canal and the anus, there is what's referred to as the anal sphincter. The anal sphincter will regulate when the fecal material is able to pass from inside of the body to outside of the body. And that's literally from start to finish, from putting something into your mouth to grabbing all the nutrients from it, to grabbing the water from it, to expelling the material that can't be used to the outside. There are a couple of things that I do want to highlight and make sure that you focus on when you do some of your studies. There are a few additional structures that you need to know that's listed. They are listed in the chart as well as in the study guide and on the PowerPoint presentations as well. We have the salivary glands. The salivary glands, we have a total of 6, 3 pair on each side. We have the submandibular meaning below the mandible, in this region right here. We have the parotid glands, which are located right here in the corner. If you eat something sour, sometimes it gets you right here. Those are the parotid glands. And then we have the sublingual. Lingual means tongue, and it's located right below our tongue. This is the one sometimes when you're talking and you just don't realize it's going to happen, and all of a sudden it just kind of squirts right out. Yeah. So sublingual, submandibular, and parotid. 3 pair. So we've got the same thing on the other side. Okay. The liver. The liver is a very important organ. It's the largest internal organ. And I say that because our skin is actually our largest organ. But the liver is the largest internal organ. It has 4 lobes to it. It has the largest lobe, which is the right lobe. It has a smaller left lobe. And then if we were to take the liver out this way and hold it up inferiorly, we would reveal the quadrate, which kind of looks like it has 4 sides, and the caudate lobe. So there are a total of 4 lobes to the liver. The liver's job is actually to produce bile, as well as filter our blood of toxins, and it goes through a variety of other things that the liver is responsible for doing in your PowerPoint presentation. But one of the very important functions of the liver is to produce bile. Bile helps us to break down and emulsify fats. And literally, some of the fats that we ingest, although they may be good, they are solid at room temperature. So if that gets inside of our bodies, you can imagine what it does to our digestive system, to our cardiovascular system. We just don't need that buildup of fat in our vascular system. Excuse me. So what the liver will do is produce this bile that helps to break all of that down. So we need our liver to do that. And it's also designed to act as a filter, of course. But when we don't use all the bile that the liver has made in order to help to break down the fat that's in the food that we may have eaten, it is stored in a very small organ that's just kind of underneath or just inferior into the posterior region of the liver, that's called the gallbladder. The gallbladder stores bile in between the meals that we eat. Now, if we have a buildup of fatty deposits inside of our digestive system or inside of our liver or inside of our gallbladder particularly, we can develop a condition that's called gallstones. We'll talk more about that when you get to pathology. Also, the pancreas. The pancreas is an organ that is not only in the digestive system, but it is also in the endocrine system, because our pancreas is designed to help us metabolize sugar. The 2 hormones that are produced by the pancreas are called insulin and glucagon. Glucagon itself sounds like glucose, and glucose means sugar. So in the PowerPoint, no, not in the PowerPoint. I believe if you look down, in the additional terms and information on the study guide, it begins to talk about diabetes. There are 2 different types of diabetes. One that has to do with the kidneys, and the other one that has to deal with the pancreas. Diabetes mellitus is the one that has to deal with the pancreas, and it has to do with the insulin production or lack thereof. So make sure you read that information on your study guide. We're not going to go too in depth about that because that is something that you will actually cover in pathology, but I just wanted to make you aware of that as well. I've mentioned the appendix. I've talked about the rugae and what sphincter muscles are. There is a diagram at the bottom of the study guide that I want to explain. When I said something about the mouth being the oral cavity, one of the things that we have to do prior to embalming is to set the features. Setting features means closing the eyes, closing the mouth, sealing the lips. And we suggest that this is done pre-embalming because if you begin to start your embalming process and then you decide to try to close the mouth and close the eyes, and if you have any difficulty, your tissues may begin to fixate before you have completed posing those features. Well, we have what's referred to as a needle injector, and if you can kind of think of the concept of a nail gun, that's kind of what a needle injector is, and it helps us to actually close the mouth. We literally have to close the mouth. We seal the lips with an adhesive, but we close the mouth, and this is how we do so. If you look on the diagram on the study guide, it actually shows you what it looks like. Inside of the needle injector, we will insert the needle itself, and it kind of looks like a divot with, if you can imagine, twist ties that you use on a loaf of bread. And what we would do, if this is the oral cavity, and let's just say here's the vestibule, because that is what is indicated on your PowerPoint presentation. Let me hold this up. That's the vestibule because here's the lower lip right here. The vestibule, the tongue, kind of like this. And we've got that thing that kind of holds the tongue down. That's pretty good, okay? Well, in the vestibule, we have this part right here. That kind of, it's that little thing that separates one side from the other, and it's called the frenulum. And we also have one that's beneath the upper lip as well. And what we will do is after we have taken our needle and put it into our needle injector, we close the mouth. When we close the mouth, we will then introduce the injector in the vestibule and we will push the plunger. The plunger will then put the needle into the gum tissue. And we'll do the same thing up top. And just as the picture indicates, you take the 2 wires or you take the 4 wires, depending upon what type of needle you have, and you twist them together and you push them down into the corners of the mouth. So you literally take the mouth, close it, twist it, and that keeps the mouth closed. Well, in cases where either the gum is diseased, the tissue is extremely soft, the person is elderly, and sometimes the tissue is eroded, then sometimes the needle injector won't work because once you use the plunger to put the needle into the tissue, it will rip right through. So there has to be another mechanism in which we can close the mouth in the event that we have that problem. And this is where and in fact, there's a picture of the needles as well as the needle injectors on the study guide, so make sure you take a look. There are 2 needles that are also shown on that diagram. One is an L-shaped autopsy needle, and the one that's kind of shaped like an S is an S-shaped autopsy needle. In cases where we need to use this type of suture, which is a mechanism of closing the mouth, and we kind of use the needles like we would thread a needle and thread, but we call it suture. Okay, so I've got the mouth open, let's say. This is for diagrammatic representative purposes. And this is the frenulum. What I would do is introduce my S-shaped, or whatever your preference is, autopsy needle beneath the frenulum. And I'd come out one side. So literally what I would do in the vestibule, introduce here, put it beneath, come out the other side. Then I would close the mouth. Once I close the mouth and the teeth are together, then I would reintroduce that, come back up across the teeth, come beneath the upper lip, and come through the nasal cavity and out. So literally what I have done is kind of created an L. I've gone in this direction and I've come out. Reintroduce, close the mouth, reintroduce, come beneath the upper lip and come out through the nostril. Once I have done that, then I re-enter the same nostril, passing through the septum of the nose and coming out of the other nostril. So then literally what I do, take this, reintroduce, come through the septum of the nose, come out the other side. Mouth is still closed. Then I would reintroduce my needle into the other nostril, coming beneath the upper lip and coming back down. So literally what I have done is created a rectangle. So once I have created that rectangle, close the mouth, tie it off, tuck the suture into the jaw area. This has to be employed sometimes for certain cases that we may encounter. It's a very strong suturing mechanism in order to keep the mouth closed because you have an anchor in the septum of the nose. So it will help to keep that mouth closed. Okay, I just wanted to explain to you the diagrams that were at the bottom so that you would understand what that concept is. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me as needed. Have a wonderful day.